Hi, welcome to LB0 Fox India Norwegian Ham Ventures. A little while ago I talked about the station controller from George KJ6VU, and since I showed it the unboxing and how the components looked, I've since mounted it, and this is going to be just a short tour for you guys to see how I've mounted it. So what I'm going to do is that I'm going to show a little bit from right here now, just how I mounted it. It's up on the wall behind me here, just above the monitor I use for the Flex here. So I got the Flex and the station controller interface up here. We're going to take a look at that in just a little while. And then we have the components back here. And I got the components back here. So let's zoom in and take a closer look at what they are. And just starting here from the top left, we got the Data and Powerhub, which I don't use at the moment because I don't have enough of these boards from George in order to actually use those. Then I have the GPIO Board. I'm going to show you a little bit closer in a little while so you can see what's hooked up and how this works. Then we have the Coex switch here, or the Coex relay as George calls it, and the Raspberry Pi host adapter board. And this is all hooked up through Cat5 cables here, one going up from the Raspberry Pi board to the GPIO board, and then one going from the Raspberry Pi board over to the Coex switch here. And what I could have done is I could have plugged the power into the power and data hub and just ran Cat5 cables from there. But that actually leads to one more cable, and I want to keep it to a minimum with cables. I run power from a separate 12-volt power supply here. You can either run power through power poles here on the Raspberry Pi module or from a barrel plug on any of these. So I got a separate 12-volt barrel plug here, and that powers all the devices. So let's zoom in to the different boards and take a look at those. And if we start here with the DCN Data and Powerhub, this is pretty simple board. You have powering connectors here if you want to solder power poles to it. You have a barrel plug, and you have network ports to different kind of devices. You also have separate module pins here for the same kind of connectors. Besides that, we have the GPIO board here. And I don't have a lot connected. I have some power lines going from a power supply here to show the voltage. That cycles through here everything, and you can see the different states that cycles through. So my power supply is 13.89 volts right now. I have a temperature probe which shows temperatures, and you probably saw it, but it'll cycle back in arbitrary degrees. Some kind of scale where water freezes at 32 degrees and boils at 212 degrees. I don't know who thought that was simpler than having it freeze at 0 degrees and boiling at 100 degrees, but it's 74.41 degrees Fahrenheit in my shack at the moment. Then we have just to one of the relays. Relay number one is just going to my Flex here to tell that to turn off and on from the Node-RED interface. Furthermore, we have the Coex board here. This has one common going to the radio here and 4 antennas which are all hooked up, or more correctly 3 antennas and a dummy load. And what I can do from here, and I'm just going to show you in the show you here what happens when I click. If I now click to port number 1, it switches and it tells the name of the antenna in clear text. This had to be done by going into the serial interface of the ESP32 here and actually code the labels here. So on port 1 I got a Windom. On port 2, I have an NFET half wave. Port 3, I got a beam that is way too low to be usable. And on port 4, I got a dummy load. And those are my antenna ports. And finally, we have the Raspberry Pi host adapter board here, which controls everything. The Node-RED server runs here on a Raspberry Pi 3. And as you saw in my previous video, this is hooked up to the GPIO pins of the Raspberry Pi. So there's not much to show here though. Power poles or barrel connector in, and there's a shutdown button here in order to shut the Raspberry Pi down manually. And that's the only magic of this board. So that's the complete magic of this, and everything's mounted to a pair of DIN rails, one here and one here, so it's just screwed into the wall and easy to just hook on and off if I want to do some changes to the setup. I've been using this for about a week now, and it seems to be working fine right now. So let's go ahead and take a look at the interface of this. And the beauty of everything here is that it is actually controlled by Node-RED, and George supplies a Node-RED interface, or a readily made, and George supplies a Raspberry Pi image with Node-RED setup for this, so it's relatively plug and play. So let's turn around and get everything working. And we got the interface here. And as you can see, you saw this in my previous episode as well, but I've made a couple of changes here. First of all, I got the flex on and flex off instead of relay 1 and relay 1 on and relay 1 off. So that makes it easier to actually see what the button does. Furthermore, down here, we got my antenna switching, and this just switches when I click. And as you saw earlier, the display updates all the way. Then we have my measurements that are down here. We got the voltmeter, which shows here, and we got the sensor, temperature sensor, which shows the degrees in, again, that arbitrary scale, which is not really logical, is it? It's degrees Fahrenheit nonetheless. I've tried, after some tips from Kyle AA0Z, to actually change it into centigrade, but my Node-RED scales aren't good enough yet. So I'm working on it. I'm not quite there yet, but we'll get there at some point. There are a couple of other buttons here. I can click here to display the IP address, and it shows the IP address on both displays here, which is really handy if you want to just double check your IPs and everything. Nonetheless though, if you're actually in the Node-RED interface, it's because you know the IP address. And then there's a couple buttons here for the watt meter modules, which I don't have, so I'm not able to measure my power and my SWR with this, but there's an optional module for that as well. And that's pretty much it. That's station controller for you, as simple as it gets. I like this thing. I think George has made, and I'm going to just move a little bit closer to the center of the frame here. George has made an excellent job of just making this work. It took me about, I'm going to say, 2.5 hours to get everything up from start to finish, including mounting the DIN rails on the wall here and getting everything up. So it's easy to get going. I'm a travel agent in real life. So if I can do it, anyone can do it. And kudos to George for making this as simple. And if you're wondering, where can I get this station controller? You can at some point over at Sierra Radio Systems. This is a beta version of it, so I'm in the beta testing group, so it's not completely ready for the public yet, but as far as I've seen for a week now, I've had almost no issues with it except for the ones I've made myself. So again, thumbs up to George. Thank you for making this, and thank you for letting me be part of the beta testing team. Unfortunately, I don't have a lot to report because everything works at the moment. So for you general public out there, everyone else, I'll just look forward to when you can find this over at Sierra Radio Systems. And I can truly recommend this if you're into remoting ham radio. Thanks once again for watching. And if you watched this far, hit a thumbs up or a thumbs down if you actually watched this far and disliked the video. Leave a comment down below. And besides that, see you down the bands. See you in my next video. 7-3, my friends.